Aloha and welcome to this screencast where I want to show you some template files that use the Bootstrap user interface framework, and also I'll show you a little bit about Bootswatch, and hopefully this will get you starting to comfortable using the system and give you some template code to fool around with. So the first thing, what I want you to do is, as you watch this screencast, follow along. Okay, so pause. When you see me do something, I want you to pause the screencast and do it yourself. If you just sit and watch me do this, it's going to go right over your head. It's not going to get in your fingers. It's going to be not that useful to you. So please, do what I do as I go through this. So the first thing I'd like you to do is go to ICS Software Engineering, bootstrap-example-intro. Here's the URL right here. And I want you to click on the fork. Okay, and I'm going to, even though I own this organization, I'm going to fork it into my own account so that you can see how that works. Okay, so now I've got my own copy of this, which I can fool around with any way that I want. And the first thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to clone this down to my desktop. So that brings up my my desktop app, and I'm going to put this into the 613 directory, so I'll say clone. Okay, and so that's done. And now what's a little interesting about this is that this is actually a repo that has several different branches, all illustrating variants on how to use Bootswatch. And so what we're going to be doing from now on is basically on my clone desktop version of the repo, I'm going to be switching between branches to show you the various things. In fact, I'm going to separate it in a separate screencast. So in this particular screencast, you're just going to see one branch, then I'm going to go to another one in the next screencast. Okay, so for this one, what we want to look at is the master branch or the basic branch. It's basically the same thing, but we'll go to the basic branch just for grins. And then what I want to do is bring up IntelliJ, and I want to say open, I'll say new project. Let me put it over here so you can see static web, next. And then I'm going to say go into the project hosting 613, bootstrap example info, finish. And then, sorry, this is coming up in the other screen. All right, so anyway, after a little bit of fiddling, what we can see is we've now got this bootstrap example intro. And there's essentially only two files that you want to look at. The first is index.html, and the second is this style.css. Okay? Those are the two files that are important. Why don't we take a look at them? And so to do that, I'll go into Chrome, I'll say open file, and I'll navigate to that same directory, and I'll click on index.html, and now we see the page. Okay? So let's see if I can move things around a little bit so that a little bit of house cleaning here. Okay, so anyway, this is the index.html page, and what I want to do is kind of go through each line of this in turn so you can see how we constructed this page. You see it has a menu. The menu doesn't do a lot, and very importantly, you can see that it's a responsive page. So if I click on this Nav Bar in the mobile version, it's one of these pill things that you would put your finger on to get the menu. If we expand it out, it becomes a regular menu. So I like live reload. It makes things, editing much more fun. So why don't we enable live reload for this particular project? So I'm going to say that's the folder I'm interested in. So it's now monitored, and then I'm going to click this button so that live reload is now enabled. And I'm noticing there's a typo in here, which you'll see. So where is that? There it is right there. So just to test, we'll just delete it and save, and you can see that using live reload, the browser has refreshed immediately with that change. Okay, so that's again a really nice, I love using live reload. It makes development go a lot faster. Okay, so let's go through this. The first question you might have is, well, where are we getting the Bootstrap framework from? And what we're going to do is we're going to load it from a content provider called bootstrap-CDN, and this is a, doggone it, this is a place on the web where you can go to get stuff, okay, and it loads very quickly. And generally they say when they want you to use the CDN stuff, they don't provide the protocol here. You see, they just have this // But when I put it in here, I use the actual HTTP, I add the protocol, okay? The reason that I do that is because of the fact that I'm using this file colon. Okay, so it turns out that in a production environment, the nice thing about specifying it this way, okay, without the protocol, is that then this link, when it works, it's going to use either HTTP or HTTPS, whichever your system happens to be using. The problem is when you're doing development and you're using this file colon URL, things don't work that well. As you can see, we don't even get the Bootstrap files at all. So what I'm going to do is add this back in, okay, and then you can see we get the MaxCDN to be loaded. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause to load these files into IntelliJ, and then I want you to delete this HTTP, refresh, see that now there's no loading of this Bootstrap files, and then put it back in and save and see that it comes back together. Okay, so give you a couple seconds, pause, make sure that you can now manipulate this part of it and see the kinds of changes that you want to have. Okay, we're back. I'm happy that you've done all that. Let's fool around with some other stuff. For example, this project here, we could change that to be, hello. We save that out, and you can see now at the top there's hello. So once you change the title, make sure that the tabbed area of your browser is changed. And similarly down here in the project here, you can change this to my rockin' system. Save that out, and you can see this should change now to be my rockin' system. Okay, so I know it seems silly, but these are the kinds of changes that you really want to be making in order to assure yourself that you can manipulate the files. Okay, so we're loading the style sheet from this Bootstrap CDN content provider. We also have this style.css, which we're loading, okay, and we load it after the Bootstrap so that we can override certain things. All right, so one of the first interesting things you see is there's this body element, and we're changing padding top to be 50 pixels. Okay, so the question you might have for yourself is, why is that there? Okay, so let's find out why it's there. Let's change this to 0 pixels and save it out and see what happens. And what you can see is that the reason why we need that 50 pixels is to make sure that the body appears below this nav bar. Okay, so we're going to add that back in, and the page looks better. Okay, so that's a common little trick you have to use with Bootstrap when you're using their nav bar system. Is you got to move the body down below it, and you can fiddle around with these other things as well, the page content, text align or image and so forth, and see what it does. We can see. Okay, so do that. This next stuff is only important if you want to use Internet Explorer versions 8 or below. Who would want to do that? I don't know, but at any rate, you just add this boilerplate in so that you can support other browsers. Then we get into this part of the code here, which is this responsive nav bar. And if you read through the Bootstrap documentation, you'll read about responsive nav bars. And what you can see here is that there's some code here which says when it gets small, we want to replace the regular nav bar with this span of an icon bar. There are those three little lines there that correspond to this line of code right here. If we wanted to make it 4, we could just copy and paste, put another one in, save it out, and now you can see there's 4 of those little lines there. Okay, so why don't you do that as well? Just copy and paste it, make sure that you can actually make that icon, that pill, change from 3 bars to 4 bars for yourself. Okay? And then we have this regular nav bar section here where we have this this list of elements. We're making the home element active, which means that it's a white font. This is something that you'll programmatically change once we have a backend for this, but it just kind of illustrates how that works. And then we have some links which are just anchors into the code, but there are no anchors actually specified below, so they don't actually work. Here's the page content class. If we look in the style.css, you can see that all we're doing there is kind of centering stuff. And when we get to the bottom, at the end of it, we're going to load jQuery as well as some bootstrap JavaScript. And that's the stuff that's used, at least in this case, to make sure that the nav bar changes itself into this pill automatically based upon the size of the system. Okay, and there's a whole lot of other JavaScript components in Bootstrap that you can play around with, and you want to have these scripts here in order to get access to all of them. All right, so that is the basic system. Play around with this. Make changes. Make sure that they show up in the version that you're using, and then we'll move on to the next one.